Hi, and welcome to Knit All the Things. My name is Laurel. I'm also known as West Maven on Instagram, Ravelry, and here. If you're new, this is a space where I talk about all the things I'm knitting, all the things I want to knit, all things yarn, just all the things. And if you're returning, welcome back, knitting bestie. I can't wait to catch up with you. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about my Cumulus Tee. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I'm going to give you all the details. I also have an Audria Shawl on my needles, as well as my dream sweater, the Pina Colada pullover. I am so excited for all of these yarn and fiber festivals. I'm going to give you some pro tips on how to prepare and plan if you are attending one, or even if you are going to shop online during these festivals. I am so excited I get to hang out with you. So grab your knitting, get cozy, and let's go. Okay, so let's talk about what I am wearing. I am wearing the Cumulus Tee. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and it is a top-down raglan style tee. It has a V-neck, and it is knit on US 2.5 needles, which is about I think it's a 3 millimeter. And then you do all of your finishing edges with a 1.5 US 1.5. So it's teeny tiny needles, and I will be honest, that's part of the reason I didn't cast this on right away. I purchased the needles and the yarn last year, and I had them all with the pattern in a little bag and had set it aside because I got really discouraged by all of the reviews on Ravelry. There are 4,100 projects, and there's, I think, 2,400 finished objects. So if that gives you kind of an idea of either the time it's taken people or the pause, because it is a lot of stockinette and it's teeny tiny needles. I'm used to knitting socks on these. I mean, it's small. It's a small, tight gauge. But I'm gonna tell you, I think it was worth it. I don't know that I'm gonna cast this on again right away because, well, let's get into the construction. So let's talk about how this is constructed. You basically cast on however many stitches, and then you're slowly increasing them and creating a V-neck, knitting flat. And then once you're done knitting flat, you join in the round. You join in the round for a little bit, then you separate sleeves and body, and then you continue on in the round on the body. All of the edges are I-cord edges. I haven't fully blocked this, I just steam blocked it since I wanted to share it with you today. I was really concerned about the I-cord at first, but I actually think it's gonna be okay. And I will say on the arms and on the body, you actually do some decreases as you're doing your I-cord in order to keep it from flaring at all. And when I was doing my arms, I thought, oh, this might be a little bit tight, but it actually is just fine. So trust the process. Petite Knit knows what she's doing. I knit this with Knitting for Olive, pure silk in the colorway Coal. And it's a really beautiful yarn. I have some here. And the string, I'm gonna try to do this. So the string is a kind of slightly, I would say, inconsistent string. It has almost some variation in it, and it has a really great feel. I think a little bit about this yarn, they actually make this silk in a humane way. So some people's opposition to silk is that it kills the silkworms in the process of processing the silk. And the reason that happens is because the silk cocoon is one piece of thread, which would be more ideal, right? Because you want, if you're milling it, that would be just one long continuous thread as opposed to bits of thread. And so people want that when they're processing the silk. And in the case, they kill the silkworm, caterpillar thing. So they kill that baby thing. But for knitting for Olive's soft silk mohair, what they do instead is they actually wait until the silk thing, I guess it would be, I don't know what stage, caterpillar thing that turns into a silk moth, butterfly thing. So once it does its whole transformation and flies away, the silk is then processed. So it isn't like the one thread, it's a bunch of pieces of silk, but they mill it in a way that is still usable and is still beautiful. It's not shiny like maybe how you would think of a typical silk, but it has a nice drape. Again, this has only been steam blocked, so I can't really speak to how it's going to wear, but I do plan on doing that right away, or wet blocking it right away and kind of sharing that, how it's been wearing, because I do plan to wear this a lot over the next couple of weeks, and I can kind of share how it's changed in fabric. So when I was knitting this, when I was knitting it flat, I was like, okay, just knit flat, just get till you can knit in the round. It's going to be great, because then you're not at least purling, right? Because there's a lot of purling, for this much of the sweater. And so I thought, okay, if I can just get into the round. And then I started knitting in the round. I'm like, okay, it's a million stitches, but if I can just get to separating the sleeves. And I separated for the sleeves, and I got to the body, and it's just a bunch of stitches on the body. And that's when my mojo just died. It was really hard for me to finish the body of the sweater. It's quite, long from the split for sleeves, and it's a lot. Other thing that I will say is, once I picked up for the sleeves, I did it in a day. The sleeves were so quick because you're in a much smaller circumference and you're just able to go. And I think for whatever reason, that was just much faster. I also decided I was going to try to use my double pointed needles, and I will say it's not really for me anymore. I loved them. In fact, when I first started knitting, I knit on straight needles, and then I switched to double pointed needles because I wanted to make little hand warmers. And so I just felt so cool having multiple needles going, and they look crazy. But reality is, once I learned magic loop, I really think that is a more seamless way for me to do it. And it's also, I don't see any laddering or any loose stitches when I do it that way. So I was starting to notice a little bit of that, and while I was trying to have fun and do something else, it just didn't seem like the right thing to do. So I switched to magic loop after my first decrease on one of the sleeves. The other sleeve, I just altogether started with magic loop, and I'm much happier with it. So on the body, when I was doing the I-cord, you use a thinner needle. So you have your stitches are all on the 2.5 needle, and then you use the 1.5 needle to bind off and do your I-cord. So I was going along, I got distracted, I had set down the 1.5 and ended up picking up the other end of the 2.5 and then continued on, and my I-cord was looking bad. And once I realized that, I had to rip that out and go back. And to maybe help you, or so you don't make the same mistake I did, I ended up threading that needle through and then finishing that way, so that I just didn't have to worry about the stitches accidentally grabbing the wrong needle again. Yeah, so that is kind of all I can really say about this sweater, other than I really think it's flattering. I'm sure it'll be flattering on many bodies. I can tuck it in. I was wearing, fun story, I was wearing a whole different jeans and outfit, but I had already recorded this entire episode, and as I was editing, I realized that the video kept pulsing and going in and out of focus, which was bothering me. So I can't imagine people watching it and feeling comfortable watching that. So we're redoing it. We're doing it again, and it's going to be great. That is my Cumulus Tee. Again, a pattern by Petite Knit. I am so happy that I made it. I don't think I will make it again. I just don't. I can't imagine wanting to make it again unless I had really special yarn that I just had to make another one. I think while it is very well written and I really like the tee, it's probably not something I will knit again. The other part of that is that I think realistically, this might be a little bit of an ego thing for me, but I want someone to come up and be like, oh wow, did you make that? This, in some ways, which is nice, looks very could be store-bought type of thing, and I don't think anyone's gonna think I made this. And again, that's an ego thing. I like to obviously share my knits and be excited by them, but this one, while it's super nice, and I am proud that I made it, and it will be really nice to wear a garment that I made around. So it has that, but realistically, unless I did something crazy with it. I just don't think I would probably knit it again, but I'm glad that I knit it the one time. So I'm curious if you knit one. You should if you want to, because again, it fits really well. I think that using the Knitting for Olive pure silk was just a dream, but who knows? Okay, so real quickly, I had a comment in the last video. They wanted to know what my cloud sweater or my cloud blouse by Petite Knit looked like once it was wet blocked. And so I'm going to quickly try that on for you guys just to show you that, and then we'll hop back onto what's on my needles. Okay, so here is the cloud blouse by Petite Knit. Try and say that 5 times fast. This is knit in Noro kompeito, and just real quickly, I wet blocked it. When I first tried this on, I would say the sweater was a little bit higher and the sleeves were certainly above my watch, and now that it's been wet blocked, I did definitely yank on them when I was blocking it, but it's much more what I wanted. So it did change quite a bit in the blocking in such a good way. It's definitely a little bit softer and fuzzier. It's definitely something I've been wearing a lot lately, and I highly recommend the yarn and the pattern. So I hope it helps just to be able to see it blocked. So let's get back to what's on my needles. Okay, so also if you're curious about more details on the cloud blouse sweater, go ahead and check out my previous episode, and all of the information and details of making that sweater are on that episode. Okay, so on my needles. I have been working on this Audria Shawl for a little while now, and I will tell you that earlier when I was trying to share this the first time, I had tried to put it on some barber cords and it just did not work out that well. I think part of the reason was that particular one was a little bit more matte, and this is a tiny needle. This is again US 3, I think, and it was just kind of getting a little caught on it, and I didn't want the stitches to go flying, so I just decided to do it this way. And the needle, so it is a little bit scrunched, but I'll do my best to kind of share it a little bit. This is a triangle shaped shawl. It is a pattern by Isang or Isang Knits, and it is a mixture of stockinette and color work and lace, and I'll share it a little bit closer. This color right here is Qing fiber yak silk, and it's in the colorway Moody, held with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair and powder. The darker contrast color is Lola Bean yarn, and her yak base, I just can't think of the name right now, and the color is Name Me. And then it is held with yarn Nouveau, their mohair base, and it is in the colorway Black Coral. So I really just think this turned out so well, and I hope that the lighting is okay. Again, this is at night and a little bit different than our usual setup, so I'm hoping everything is working out and coming across. But it's just really, really pretty. It's been so fun to knit, and it really is one of those things that I keep grabbing. Right now, I have finished all of the color work, all of the lace sections, and I'm going to work on another stockinette section. And then there's a beautiful scalloped, I think ribbed scalloped situation happening along the edge. So I've been a little nervous because the stitch count's getting pretty high, but I'm right at the end. So I'm really excited. This is hard to tell, but it's actually quite a large shawl, and I am just so excited to get it done. I think it's going to be so nice in the fall and winter, and I really like the color. I really do. I was thinking if I were to knit this again, one thing I would think about was actually doing a low contrast and doing something, this is totally out of my wheelhouse, but go with me on this, something like a white for maybe the main color, and then like an ice gray would be really pretty, like a low contrast that has just enough contrast where you can see the color work, but not so much that it is as like totally high contrast as this. I think that would be pretty, or even a dark gray and a black, I think would have been really pretty as well. I'm also really excited because once this lace blocks out, it's going to just be so fun. I hope that I'm doing it a little bit of justice here, but it really is pretty. I'm also such a big fan of the scalloped color work. This is actually one of my favorite types of stripe, if you will. There's a Rabina sweater and a few other sweaters that have this kind of scalloping on it, and I've always found that to be so pretty, and I just can't get enough. And then you'll see when this is done, but it's also going to have that scalloped edging, which is going to kind of mirror that scalloping on the stitches. So it is just such a fun shawl. I think the last time we talked, I was just about to start the stripe. So I've done a little bit, but again, I was focused on getting this done, and I've been working on my dream sweater, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I have to say, knitting with yak bases or knitting with a yak blend yarn has been really nice. It's such a soft, it really is such a surprisingly soft, like nice, warm, beautiful yarn. And both the Lola bean and the Qing fiber is just so nice. It's been really, really fun to knit. And I've been knitting this in the evenings because obviously it is warm and hot in a lot of places. As it is in Portland, I'm very lucky to have air conditioning, and so in the evenings is when I've been picking that up and working on it. Unless I've been working on this sweater. So this sweater was featured in issue 45 of Pom Pom magazine. It is the Pina Colada sweater. I'm going to try to open up to it. It is the Pina Colada sweater. I'm trying to make sure we don't have too much glare. Let's see. Okay. It's the Pina Colada sweater. This is a pattern by Laura Zukaite. And as you can see, there is like a trellis type of motif, and it is one color held throughout with intarsia striping, essentially. And I saw this at Flock Fiber Festival, and just, I mean, I visited it both days that I was there, and I also just really, I can't even stress enough how amazing this sweater is in person. I don't think it gives off the same as in the magazine, the sheerness of the diamonds, but it's really, really nice. So when I was there, I purchased yarn because I was that motivated. I saw it and I was like, oh, I must make this sweater. And I immediately, so for me, when I'm looking at projects, it's always a great sign when I'm like, oh, I would 100% make that. I want to make it in these colors. Like, I instantly have a picture in my mind what it is I want to make. Like, that's a good sign. That's when I know that I really want to make it. Now, sometimes I see a pattern or I see a bunch of people making the same pattern and I get super excited and I want to make it, but I don't really have like a plan and I'm a little bit all over the place. That's when I know that I'm kind of being influenced rather than it being something that I'm really, really can't wait to make. So this is the Pina Colada sweater, a pattern by Laura Zukaite. Again, I saw it for the first time at Flock Fiber Festival. I'm actually getting, I don't remember where I was last time, but we're getting there. So I technically, in the pattern, it says I could start, I think, on the neck shaping. But I think that if I stopped right here, I am not gonna like how cropped this is, because I'm trying to imagine it, you know, on, and I just don't see myself loving this croppedness. However, it is kind of wide, and I'm wondering, can I stretch it a little bit? So here's a thought. I really want to get this done. I'm motivated. I'm kind of wondering if I should put in a lifeline. I mean, this is what I should do. Let me tell you what I should do. I should put in a lifeline and then go ahead and knit one extra motif, do my neck increases, and then hold it up and be like, yep, this was way bad idea. It was too long. Or go, nope, this looks good, and then move on to my back panel. The other thing that I'm considering, I mean, that's what I should do, right? What will likely happen is I'll forget that I should be putting in a lifeline and just go for it, and then we all get to learn our lessons there. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do. But what I was thinking, if I only work on this and really focus my attention on this sweater and do the back panel, part of me would love to wear this to flock. And the way I could do this, because there's no chance that I would get the sleeves and the back panel done, I don't think. But what I think I could get done is the front and the back panel. It's a drop shoulder, so I've got that going for me. So because it's a drop shoulder, I could finish it and then just do ribbing instead of sleeves. Hear me out. Seam it together. Instead of doing sleeves, do ribbing. And then if I hate that, I can always take that out after the festival and add a sleeve. 2 weeks. I have a feeling there's not a chance, and you know where, that I get that done, but maybe. So the yarn that I used is Isager Alpaca 1, and this is just the black colorway, number 30. And then I'm using yarn Nouveau in the colorway Sapphire, and it's a sport weight. So these are the two yarns. I really think they're beautiful. I think Yarn Nouveau might be going to Flock Fiber Festival again. I really like their Moody palette, and their yarns have been really nice to work with. I think that this could be a cool sweater. So there's a lot of things you could do with this too. You could make, you know, different color, pick like one stripe a different color. You could have, there's a lot of possibilities with this sweater. I will say right now it looks a little bit intimidating with all of the bobbins, but for each kind of diamond situation, there are points where you only actually need one, and so you'll have half as many of the bobbins as you need to, or as you need, as I currently have. So that's kind of something that's nice. The other thing about this that I will say was I was originally knitting these on Addi Click interchangeable needles, and I like that. I like those needles, but for this project I don't like them, because an Addi Click, the way it works, for the cord and the needle to go together, you push them in and you twist it, and that you'll hear a click and you know that it's locked. Some needles, you have the needle and you place like pin in and you twist it, and then that kind of locks the needle. All those are great, but with the Addi, when I'm turning it and moving my yarns as I'm knitting, it caught twice and undid. So I was like halfway, and right here I would have like some stitches falling apart, and it was kind of stressful. So I realized in my fixed needle sets I had this Chaogu needle, and I will say for fixed needles, I think they're my favorite, and I am considering getting an interchangeable set because I do really like the fixed ones so much, but it really made all the difference. I think having the right tool when you're knitting really, really can make the experience pleasant or unpleasant depending on what's going on. But this definitely changed the game on me wanting to pick it up and knit with it. So just by changing the needle and not having to deal with the stress of it falling apart or just having issues with the needle has made it go by a lot faster. See, I think this is gonna stretch. I think, I don't know. I think we can, I just don't want it to be too short. I know the thing is, I know I'm pretty sure I have enough yarn. If I don't, I would rather have shorter sleeves than a shorter body because I don't typically wear any of the sweaters that I've made that are super cropped. I just don't reach for them. So I think it will be much better if I can make it longer. I'll try and do, I know you're telling me, Laurel, just put a lifeline in. I'll try, okay? I'll do it. I'll try to do it. We'll see. So that's kind of what I have going on for that. That's all the knitting that I have been knitting. Again, I just finished this today, so I'm gonna block it. But what I really wanted to tell you and talk to you about is the upcoming yarn and fiber festivals. So in a previous life, I used to be a flight attendant, and when I first was hired, they always said, oh, it's such a lifestyle. Oh, it's a lifestyle instead of just a job. And I remember thinking when I was new, like that seems like such a weird thing to say about a career or a job, that it's a lifestyle. But it kind of is. I think I take for granted sometimes some of the things that I do just to make travel easier. So I thought I would share some of those tips with you and some things that I learned from last year's Block Fiber Festival, and I hope that will help you if you're attending this year or if you're maybe attending any of the other festivals, whether it's one in your city or one that you're traveling to. I think a lot of these tips can help. And keep in mind, if a lot of these festivals also have some sort of online presence, so if you're unable to go to them, then you can always participate or enjoy them in different ways. So for Flock Fiber Festival, which is in 2 weeks from now, I will be doing a recap video and a regular podcast in a couple of weeks. But for now, let's talk about how I'm preparing. So last year, I decided that I wanted to stay in an Airbnb. This year, I'm not going to do that. Last year, I loved it, but this year I'm traveling with my family, and so for that reason alone, I'm gonna get a bigger, spacious place. So last year's Airbnb was very close to the venue, but it was still a drive. So there was, to me, that was a little bit of a negative, only because if I wanted to step out and go somewhere, I would have to get in my car and drive somewhere because it wasn't too close to anything. This year's is different. But that kind of, I liked that it was close, but just given all the information now, I love Seattle and a lot of the different neighborhoods, and I probably would have just picked a different neighborhood instead of trying to be so close to the venue because it didn't really do much for me in terms of getting there, because either way I was gonna have to drive. So it was great. It was really cozy. I liked having a space that was definitely nowhere near the venue, that was just quiet and a sanctuary and all to myself. I don't think anyone was home in the house. That it was like a apartment above a garage. I don't think anybody was home at all the whole time I was there. So it was very quiet, and there was a grocery store close by, so there was like lots of good points to it. But again, I'm excited to stay in a hotel. It's not the convention center hotel, but it is walking distance. So I'm very excited for that. Part of, we'll get to it in a second. So that's kind of, I think, what I learned this year is that also Airbnbs are not necessarily going to be more or less expensive. It's just going to be different. And I ended up probably paying the same as I would have with a hotel, with like the cleaning fees and all the other stuff. So it wasn't like a money saving thing. If you are, another thing to kind of consider with these festivals, when I went to Sacred Sheep, I decided to drive, but I would have actually taken public transportation or Uber because it was very close, and then I wouldn't have worried about traffic or parking or any of that. This time I'm walkable, so I'm going to be walking to the yarn festival and not driving. But again, I think just planning all of that in advance sometimes helps alleviate any stress or anything around the unknowns. Then, when I'm going to one of these festivals, I'm like, what am I gonna wear? What should I pack? So I like to pack a lot of things that are going to work well together. If it's too hot, then I can have like a backup, or if it's cooler, then I can have a backup. So last year I wore a lot of linen. I also wore my Rhoda jumper, and it has a bunch of big holes in it, and that was great in the evening. So just kind of keeping an eye. I like to look at the weather app for the city that I'm going to, like 2-3 days in advance, so I can start planning my outfits and what makes the most sense. In talking about planning and packing, things to pack. here we go. I think having random things like safety pins, make sure you have enough hair ties. Like I'm always wanting to pull my hair up, and it's just like the crazy little things that when you're at home you can just go and grab or you don't think about, but all these little things like definitely help. Sewing kit, you never know. The other thing is packing cubes. The packing cubes, you can get all of these like sweaters and things that we have that are like large and maybe don't pack as flat and small into suitcases much better. They definitely help compact your items. And then if you throw a couple extra ones in, you can use them to pack up your yarn that you purchase once you're heading home. The other kind of thing that I was thinking of is like what to bring to knit, because that's what we like to do, right? We're like, oh, what should we bring to knit? Because we're at this knitting thing, we're gonna be hanging out with our knitting friends and, you know, all the knitting time. One thing I learned last year, and it could just be me, but I don't know. I knit a lot at home, and I felt like I actually knit less going to the festival because I was just enjoying people's company, and sometimes I just like set my knitting down because I get so distracted and involved in talking to people that I just actually am not knitting. But I really did knit a lot less than I thought I was going to knit. So one thing that I would say that's a nice thing to bring is just something that's one stockinette, so you're not really having to like focus on your knitting and you can enjoy the company of others. And something like this actually probably would have been perfect because this would have been a great like long-term or long trip. This would have been great for a long trip. It would have been a good knit to bring because it was just a bunch of stockinette. I carried all of the yarn and everything in this small BA bag from Hohi & Co. And so it really compacts quite a bit. But what is really, really a good idea is a sock or something small. I have a few babies. I don't have a few babies. My friends are having a few babies, and so I'm going to be knitting some baby things, I think, when I'm there, because those are just tiny little items, and they're a lot of stockinette, and I think that will be a good, like, travel project. And I won't have to bring, like, tons of yarn or anything for that. I wanted to talk about purchases next. So last year, I felt for myself did a really good job buying yarn. Let me explain what I mean. So before I leave, I go through my queue on Ravelry or however you keep track of what you want to make, and I start by writing sweater quantities, like in a notes app. So you pull it up, it'll say like X, like whatever sweater, and then the yarn quantity that you're going to need for your size, and just have it in a little easy to find note. And that will help you a lot, because when you show up to these yarn festivals and there's so much amazing yarn and so many things, sometimes, at least for me, I get overstimulated and I can't actually focus on what I should get, and I maybe don't get anything because I just don't know. Like, I'm like, I don't know what I would make. All of a sudden I have no idea. So having that little list of items that you want to make and what yarn you're going to need is so helpful. So let's talk about what I purchased last year. I purchased yarn to make my champagne cardigan, which I made, and I bought this mohair, this dark coral. I bought the yarn that I'm making my Pina Colada sweater in, and I think that's it. I'm trying to think. I think I only bought maybe one skein that I haven't used yet of all of the yarn that I bought on that trip. So I really planned well for things I was like ready to cast on. Think fall, think, winter, what it is you want. And I did really well, like focusing in on what that was. And then having some wiggle room and some planning for purchases that are maybe not yarn, like notions, or I really like getting a stitch marker set and having maybe a tiny little project bag or something like that you know that you're going to want as a souvenir. Just kind of having those things in mind are going to make the experience much easier. You can then like shop away and then have breaks and talk to people and all those things and not feel overwhelmed, because some of the things I would do differently. Let's talk some of the things I would do differently. So last year I did a really bad job day one of snacking. So normally I'm actually very good at packing some sort of snack, some nuts, a snack bar, a piece of fruit, having a water bottle, all these things. And I did none of that on day one. And I had traveled from Portland. And by the time I think that I finally got like food was like 4 p.m. Not a good idea. So pack snacks. As many snacks as you think you can have, because I think that's always like key to just having like something on hand. It makes everything easier. The hangry feelings go down, and it's just it's a way to like take care of your body and yourself. The other thing that I would suggest is giving yourself breaks, because it is so fun and there's so many people. For me, I'm an introvert, and so I like being around everybody and seeing all the things and talking to everybody, but then I need breaks. I realize for myself personally, I just need breaks. And so having like going and stepping out and getting a coffee, or just having a minute, going for a little walk, all those things really help the whole experience be like so enjoyable and more stress-free. And so that's kind of one of those things that I definitely recommend doing, especially for the multi-day festivals. The other thing is finding little knitting groups outside of the venue and little gatherings, get-togethers. I think it's nice to just have like moments that are not buying centered or yarn centered, but just building new friendships and just being able to like hang and meet people. I had the best time just finding a table and sitting down and knowing no one, but like being able to make instant friends. So to me, that's always amazing. I am going to be, again, as I've said a million times, and I'm so sorry I keep talking about it, but I'm excited. So I'm going to Flock Fiber Festival in a couple of weeks, and look for me, because I'm going to have little goodies. Come say hi. It's like my very favorite thing in the whole world to meet you guys. So please make sure you say hi if you see me around, and I will have a little something for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be seeing you guys in a couple of weeks. If you are not my knitting bestie, what's even going on? Go ahead and subscribe below and like this video, because it tells YouTube that other fiber enthusiasts like yourself enjoy this type of content. Until 2 weeks from now, look for Flock Fiber Festival recap and the next video. Make some yarn magic. Bye!